The haunting melody and surreal music video for Soundgarden's Black Hole Sun left many viewers mesmerized and wondering about its deeper meaning when it was released in 1994. This iconic song went on to become one of the defining tracks of the grunge era. In today's video, let's talk about the history of the song, how it came together, and why frontman Chris Cornell thought the song wouldn't be a mainstream success. Formed in 1984, Soundgarden were the first of the big four grunge bands to nab a major recording contract when they signed with A&M Records in the late 80s. They were expected to be the first grunge band to hit it big from Seattle, but Pearl Jam, Alice in Chains, and Nirvana all had platinum records before Soundgarden did. It was during the late 80s and early 90s. The band also underwent some lineup changes before finding their classic and most commercially successful lineup ahead of releasing their 1991 record and their third album, Bad Motor Finger. This lineup consisted of frontman and guitarist Chris Cornell, guitarist Kim Thayil, bassist Ben Shepherd, and Matt Cameron on drums. Bad Motor Finger was released on October 8th, 1991, 2 weeks after Nirvana's Nevermind came out. Then in August of 91, Pearl Jam released their debut record 10, and by January of 92, alternative rock and grunge was the hot new thing. Nirvana's Nevermind went to the #1 spot, displacing Michael Jackson on the album charts, and their single Smells Like Teen Spirit peaked at number 6 on the Hot 100 chart. Couple this with several other huge singles for Nirvana that year, including Come As You Are, Lithium, and In Bloom, in addition to Pearl Jam's songs Jeremy and Even Flow. And then you also had Alice in Chains' dark masterpiece Dirt coming out in late 1992, giving the band the biggest record of their career with several massive singles, Wood, Rooster, and Them Bones. By comparison to their fellow Seattle bands, Bad Motor Finger was a slow burn. Alice in Chains' Dirt went platinum in just 3 months, while Bad Motor Finger took 2 years to achieve the same milestone. The album stalled at number 39 on the Billboard chart, and they only had one charting single in America with the song Outshined, which peaked at number 45 on the US mainstream rock tracks chart. Things probably weren't helped by the fact that the other single, Jesus Christ Pose, was banned by MTV for its religious imagery. I do want to point out that there seems to be this narrative that I don't necessarily agree with, that Kurt Cobain's death in April of '94 signaled the end of grunge. I mean, if you look at the actual charts and releases that came out in the wake of his death or around the time he had passed away, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, and Alice in Chains all had #1 records months or even years after he died. Granted, Soundgarden's record Super Unknown did come out a month before Kurt died, but the members themselves admitted in the book Grunge is Dead that Super Unknown was a slow burn, taking many years to hit the 6 million copies milestone. I'd say grunge was probably more on a slow decline rather than an abrupt one like some people seem to claim. By the time Soundgarden had started work on Super Unknown in the summer of '93, there were a lot of expectations from their label that this forthcoming album was going to be the group's breakout hit. The label suggested working with producer Michael Beinhorn, whose credits up until this point included Red Hot Chili Peppers, Violent Femmes, and Soul Asylum. The band by this time in their career had mostly co-produced their own albums, and for a majority of the records had worked with Pantera producer Terry Date. So Soundgarden was initially a little hesitant to bring in an outsider and very protective of their artistic process, and didn't really like producers who made too many comments on modifying their songs. Beinhorn, for his part, jumped at the chance to work with Soundgarden, and as a tryout, they recorded 2 songs together. He recalled to The Ringer, "I wasn't sure that we clicked, but somehow I guess we did." Soundgarden's manager and Chris Cornell's then wife Susan Silver remarked, "All of the managers who I've ever spoken to loved working with Michael Beinhorn. He was just great to deal with in terms of the business end of things, and every musician that's ever worked with him didn't like the experience at all." Going on to add, "and came through it usually with the best records of their career." The timing of Beinhorn coming on board and the band feeling like their next record was going to be huge seemed perfect. This sentiment was also echoed by Metallica's manager Cliff Bernstein. Guitarist Kim Thayil recalled being at a Metallica gig after Badmotorfinger had come out and Metallica was of course touring on their Black album. Bernstein showed the guitarist how Soundgarden's career trajectory was closely following Metallica's, telling the musician, the next record you make, the record of your life, and it's through the roof. But things got off to a bit of a rocky start with their new producer. By the time Beinhorn came on board, the group had about a third of the songs figured out for their next album, and Cornell would send Beinhorn demo tapes through the mail. One tape in particular had about a dozen or so songs on them. The producer wasn't impressed with what the frontman was coming up with, referring to these tracks as second-rate Soundgarden songs. Beinhorn remarked to The Ringer, "I realized that we had to have a conversation before we ended up with a record that no one would be particularly happy with." Beinhorn added that Cornell felt pressure to write songs in the same vein as what Soundgarden had previously done. Beinhorn pushed Cornell to write whatever came out of him, reminding him that there wasn't one Soundgarden sound, and the band had already built up an audience who was willing to hear whatever they had to say. He then asked Cornell what music he liked, to which the frontman responded, the Beatles and Cream. Beinhorn told him, "Okay, go write music that sounds like the Beatles and Cream." It was over the next several weeks. One night Cornell was driving back from Bear Creek Studios, about a 35 to 40 minute drive from Seattle, and remembered hearing a news story where he thought he heard the news anchor reportedly use the words "Black Hole Sun." Cornell later admitted that he most likely misheard what the reporter was saying, but he thought to himself it was the perfect title for a song. Those three words created so many images in his head, and it was an instance of where he had the title before he had any music. Here's what he told Howard Stern.
Were you in a room alone when you wrote that song?
I was in a car driving home like at 4 a.m. when I wrote that song.
In your head, like, in other words?
Yeah.
You're driving along,
yeah,
and the tune comes to you in your head?
Yeah, the whole thing, and even the solo was all in there. And then I raced, I just tried to keep it revolving so I wouldn't forget. Went inside, kind of whistled it into a tape recorder, which I never listened back to, but I just in case I forgot it. And then the next day I kind of wrote out the lyrics, but I had the lyrical idea and everything.
And it all meant something to you, and you heard it in your head. You hear it in your head almost like you're listening to the radio.
Exactly.
Cornell mentioned in a separate interview that he added a couple of key changes in the verse to make the melodies more interesting. Then I wrote the lyrics, and that was similar, a stream of consciousness based on the feeling I got from the chorus and the title. Cornell loved the combination of two opposites, a black hole and the sun. A black hole being a billion times larger than the sun, a void, a giant circle of nothing, while the sun was a giver of all things life. This contrast of bright and dark, hope and underlying moodiness, as he put it. He even compared it to the Syd Barrett era of Pink Floyd, where there was a happy veneer over something really dark. Cornell later added, "It's not something I can do on purpose, but occasionally it will happen by accident." 3 weeks later, Beinhorn, who had just come back from an open casket funeral of a close relative, received another demo consisting of 4 songs from Cornell. The first song on that demo was Fell on Black Days, a song which the producer loved. There was another song that had Alice in Chains guitarist Jerry Cantrell playing on it, called Anxious, but the producer thought that it wasn't really appropriate for the album, and it's never been released since. The third song was called Tighter and Tighter, which ended up on Soundgarden's subsequent release, 1996's Down on the Upside. Beinhorn wanted to include the song on their Super Unknown album, but the band opted not to put it out at the time. And then the final track on that demo was Black Hole Sun, and that song blew Beinhorn away, and he recalled how it was one of the best songs he'd ever heard. Beinhorn recalled, "The best music has periods of tension and release, and Black Hole Sun is almost all tension, but it keeps dragging you along with it." That song ended up transporting the producer back to his place of mourning. Beinhorn rang up Cornell after listening to the song almost 15 times in a row. He remarked, "I told Chris he was a genius." He said, "Huh, really?" Cornell told one interviewer, "If I write lyrics that are bleak or dark, it usually makes me feel better." That was the moment that the producer knew that Soundgarden were ready to go into the studio and make an album. Not everyone was convinced of the song's potential, including guitarist Kim Thile, who told Ringer, "I didn't orient myself towards radio, and so I may have been a little more resistant because it was not necessarily friendly to my style of playing guitar until you get to the solo. Prior to Cornell recording the vocals, the producer sat down with him and asked the frontman to listen to 2 Frank Sinatra songs, one of which is I Get Along Without You Very Well and Only the Lonely, to give him an idea of how the songs should be recorded.
I get along without you very well.
The producer told an interviewer that Sinatra soars so far over these incredible arrangements. Sinatra, he could surpass all that just because of how well he could perform. He didn't just sing the melody, he performed. Cornell had to do 11 vocal takes for the song, with the best ones being stitched together. It was a process that took 2 days, with the frontman admitting that by the end of everything, he felt like an awful singer. At the time of writing and recording Black Hole Sun, Cornell told Entertainment Weekly that he didn't think in terms of hits or singles. He thought that maybe at some point Black Hole Sun could maybe be a hit or maybe be the last single from Super Unknown. He referred to it as an afterthought single, stating, sometimes when a record has been out for a while, right before the record company decides to stop promoting it, they'll do one last single that's different, like something for the fans or whatever. But people's attitude towards the song seemed to change once it was finally mixed and mastered. Soundgarden's ex-bassist Hiro Yamamoto stopped by Bad Animal Studio in Seattle, where the band was recording Super Unknown, to meet with his old bandmates and listen to the new songs they were working on. He heard Black Hole Sun, with Thile remarking what he said next, stating, "That's your hit right there, that's the song." Even drummer Matt Cameron concurred, and even Dave Grohl of Nirvana said the same thing when he heard the song months before the album came out.
I remember being at Robert Lang's studio in Seattle for a Nirvana session. The last time we ever recorded together, we recorded with Adam Casper, who was a great producer in town, a Seattle guy. And at that session, he came in with the new Soundgarden, and it was before it was released. And he said, "Hey, do you guys want to hear the stuff we just recorded for the new Soundgarden record?" And me and Chris Novoselic said, "Yeah, put it on." And he played Black Hole Sun. And I remember thinking, holy shit, this is going to be huge. This will be enormously huge, because to me, it was that perfect meeting of the Beatles and Black Sabbath, which is, I think, what we put in our Nirvana bio. Like, you know, we sound like ABBA and Black Sabbath, or the Beatles and Black Sabbath or something, but I don't think that had ever successfully been paired until that record, and in particular, that song. It was just so much more melodically sophisticated than anything any of the other bands in Seattle were doing, or in rock.
In a funny twist, the members of Soundgarden compared the reaction to Black Hole Sun before its release to hearing Nirvana's Smells Like Teen Spirit for the first time with Thile recording. When we heard Nevermind a few months before it came out, we got to Smells Like Teen Spirit, and Ben started laughing. Oh my god, that's a hit. Even the band's label, A&M, knew that they had a huge hit on their hands, but they opted to make it the third single instead of the first one for the album. Despite all the positive feedback the band was receiving for the song, Cornell still thought the lyrics were too weird to have broad appeal, telling Entertainment Weekly, "It started to occur to us that it might be a single that would have broader appeal, but definitely not lyrically. When I think of hit songs, they have to be somewhat anthemic in the world of rock, and I didn't see Black Hole Sun as being that." Despite all the signs pointing to a huge hit, the band was also a little apprehensive about what releasing a huge single could mean for their career. If it was a massive hit, were they expected to play the song everywhere they went? They had worked so hard for their musical identity up until this point, they didn't want to be known for just one song. Super Unknown was released on March 8th, 1994, almost a month before Kurt Cobain's death. Spoon Man was issued as the first single in February of '94, peaking at number 3 and 9 on the mainstream rock tracks chart and the alternative airplay chart. The second single, The Day I Tried to Live, came out a few weeks after Cobain's death, peaking at number 13 and 25 on the same charts. Then Black Hole Sun, the third single, was issued in May of '94. The video dropped on MTV 1 month later in June.
Black hole sun, won't you come?
Black Hole Sun, like everybody predicted, was a massive hit. It topped the mainstream rock tracks chart, it was number 2 on the alternative airplay chart, and number 9 on the pop airplay chart. Super Unknown gave Soundgarden their first number 1 album of their career, with it going to be certified 6 times platinum in America. In addition to the songs I previously mentioned as singles, they also had a couple other big hits, including Fell on Black Days and My Wave. Initially in concerts, Chris Cornell performed the song acoustically before the group decided to perform it as a full band. Black Hole Sun received the award for Best Metal Hard Rock Video at the 1994 MTV VMAs, and it also got a Grammy Award for Best Hard Rock Performance and a nomination for Best Rock Song. Cornell mentioned about the award at the time, "I don't know if Black Hole Sun is a metal song, but we'll take it." So the two big questions people have is, what is the song and video about? Cornell has largely stated the same thing in several interviews he's done about the song. In 1996, he admitted to requests that lyrically it's probably the closest to me just playing with words for the sake of anything I've written. But he also noted it's not a happy song despite the melody being chipper. But if you dig a little deeper, there seems to be Cornell's thoughts or reflections on the music industry, an industry which is full of deceit, backstabbing, and exploitation, with lines like "the times are gone for honest men." Cornell even added in one interview that he was lucky that him and his bandmates didn't experience a lot of that stuff themselves, but they'd seen plenty of it happen to other groups. As for the line, "no one sings like you anymore," supposedly came from a stranger who told Cornell that. It even took on a deeper meaning once he passed away in 2017. Beinhorn even told Uncut Magazine that some listeners and journalists thought the song was written about Kurt Cobain. The producer also added that he disagreed with the idea that the song was about nothing, and the band's guitarist Kim Thile added that Chris didn't like his lyrics to be too dissected. One possible explanation is that the narrator is tired of humanity and hopes for it to finally end. People's smiles in the video hide what really lies underneath, something truly dark. It was stood in stark contrast to the videos of the 80s, showing a disdain for everything fake and phony. But let me know your thoughts on the lyrics. And of course, we got to talk about the music video. Soundgarden had been pretty adamant in interviews that they really hated doing music videos, but it was an obligation to get a single out there and get played on MTV. The previous videos that Soundgarden had done, they weren't really very happy with, despite being very involved in the whole process. It was in 1994 that A&M record executive Rich Frankel approached director Howard Greenhall with an offer to possibly direct Soundgarden's video for Black Hole Sun. Greenhall had previously worked with INXS, Sting, and Pet Shop Boys, and he was also a huge fan of Soundgarden. He told The Ringer, "Any kind of music video you do, you just hope to God it's got a good title." Greenhall came up with a simple concept, as he put it, a sci-fi sarcastic thing where it's the end of the world and everybody's smiling. The director took inspiration from the opening scene of the film Blue Velvet that shows an idyllic kind of town with something much darker beneath the surface. The band loved his idea, but they just had one condition. They just wanted to play the song expressionless. Greenhall was actually relieved because all the smiles in the video had to be digitally altered with computers, and back then it was pretty expensive to do such effects in music videos. Since the members didn't want to be shown with exaggerated smiles, it saved some money in the production budget. Also, the band members' expressionless or bored faces were a good juxtaposition to all the other characters in the video. Fun fact you guys may not know is that the necklace that Chris Cornell wears in the Black Hole Sun video was given to him by Blind Melon frontman Shannon Hoon. The director told all the actors in the Black Hole Sun video to, and I quote, "look f***ing psychotic." It was the first time the members of Soundgarden had no objections or even notes on the first draft of the video. The video premiered on MTV in June of '94 with MTV VJ Matt Pinfield summing up the audience's reaction to it, remembering Black Hole Sun, "It was just so freaky for young people seeing that. It was very much a horror show type experience. It was disturbing in a beautiful way." Despite the song's success, Cornell stated in an interview that he never felt pressure to recreate a similar sounding song. He told The Ringer, "Black Hole Sun didn't seem to corner us or create a problem. It provided a moment when a lot of eyes and ears were on us. We didn't have to recreate Black Hole Sun. We never felt that need. But sadly, Super Unknown's success also spelled the beginning of the end for Soundgarden. The tour for the album saw the band headlining their own shows for the first time with a massive budget. And while the beginning of the tour went reasonably well, it was following Kurt Cobain's death that the members slowly started to drift apart and have more conflicts behind the scenes. If you guys want to know more about why Soundgarden broke up during the mid to late 90s, I've actually done a whole video on the topic and covered their album Down on the Upside. The link is down below. Soundgarden finally called it quits in 1997, reuniting almost a decade later until 2017 when frontman Chris Cornell sadly passed away. In the years since its release, Black Hole Sun has become Soundgarden's signature song and one of the most recognizable tracks of the grunge era. It saw a bit of a resurgence in 2007 when it was released as an on-disc track for the video game Rock Band 1 and as DLC later on for Guitar Hero, and even recently appeared in Fortnite Festival. The song has also appeared in countless shows and movies, and it continues to resonate with new generations of listeners as evidenced by the resurgence on streaming and rock radio charts following major events like Cornell's death in 2017 and this year's solar eclipse, which actually propelled the song to the #1 spot on the rock charts. That does it for today's video, guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again in Rock and Roll True Stories. Take care.